Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And this week I have a very special guest, my wife, Jess, and potentially our cat Murphy, who might be popping in and out. But
it's you.
This is our second episode on John Ford. Only 78 more to go. But for those who haven't tuned into Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have three segments. We have coming attractions for the week of release, which is June 16th. Then we'll get into our feature, which is Bucking Broadway. And then we have some recommendations for you. So to get things started with our coming attractions, it's an interesting weekend as we have The Blackening, we have Pixar's Elemental, The Flash, Extraction 2, that Chris Hemsworth Netflix series, a documentary on Stan Lee coming to Disney+, but we both have the same most anticipated movie of that weekend. And Jess, what is your most anticipated movie for that weekend's release?
Asteroid City.
Why is Asteroid City the movie that you're most excited for?
Because we already saw The Blackening.
True.
And I enjoyed that a lot. And because I like Wes Anderson.
Honestly, by the time this actually releases, we would have seen The Blackening, Elemental, The Flash, and Asteroid City. But Asteroid City is also my most anticipated because Wes Anderson's one of my favorite directors. And, spoiler alert, he will be following up John Ford on Welcome to the Wasteland in 2025. So, just keep that in perspective. But I look forward to this. The cast is insane. Like, he's even adding, like, Tom Hanks and stuff like that into his cast. And it just seems like such a quirky idea of this small little desert town with an asteroid in it, aliens.
I mean, it's Wes Anderson, so you know it's going to be quirky, right? That's like part of the aesthetic.
Absolutely. And Jason Schwartzman getting a lead performance in this one, which is interesting, with Scarlett Johansson. So it has a lot of elements going for it. I'm excited about it. Basically anything Wes Anderson coming out, I'm probably going to be excited about. I think the only thing that could have me more excited is if it was a Coen Brothers movie. But hopefully you go check out. It's a pretty big weekend. There's a lot of things coming out for this weekend, so plenty of awesome things to check out. The Blackening was great, and I've heard some good things about The Flash. I think initial praise was that it's the greatest comic book movie of all time, and then the reviews that have been coming out as of late have been like, it's good, to it's a mess. So you're going to have to find out. Go see it. And apparently Elemental was not the best choice to release at Cannes.
Why?
It has like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So is Indiana Jones. So maybe Disney shouldn't have gone to like the most pretentious French film festival and dumped some of their movies at it. But you're going to have to find out for yourself.
It's fine.
Asteroid City got some good reviews. But we're here to talk about Bucking Broadway. And obviously this is directed by John Ford. Came out in 1917, one of his first feature-length films. This was actually thought to be lost forever. And then they found a copy at the French National Center for Cinematography. And there's still like 60 or 70 John Ford films missing. So there's a pretty big deal that like this is available. I actually own this unknowingly because they do include this on the Criterion collection of Stagecoach. So if you own Stagecoach on Criterion, you own Bucking Broadway. Just go to the supplements section and you can enjoy this 54-minute movie. Also starring Harry Carey as Cheyenne Harry yet again, just like in Straight Shooting from our first episode. Yeah, that Harry Carey, he's back again. And interesting enough, this had a ton of cuts from it. Apparently, there was a scene which I actually noticed the edit of Harry Carey picking up a bottle and smashing a guy over the head with it. In the movie, they cut when he picks up the bottle to him wrestling with the guy because apparently that was too obscene.
All right.
There was 3 attempts of a man kissing a woman. They cut out all 3 of them.
Oh.
The fight was cut down in half.
Oh.
Which, if you watch the movie, that's a giant part at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, it's that, like, endgame battle
Yeah.
length at the end of it.
I mean...
And there was 3 more scenes of our antagonist being intoxicated that were cut out.
Oh.
So we only got to see 1 scene of actor Vester Pegg being a drunken mess. So apparently we could have got 3 times as many scenes.
What a name.
Vester Pegg. But Jess, what are your general thoughts on Bucking Broadway?
Like you said while we were watching it, some pretty impressive camera shots.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a pretty straightforward love triangle, honestly. But still, it's early cinema. It's long for early cinema, it feels like.
Well,
it would have been longer if they kept more stuff in. But
it's interesting because this is at the time where like stuff like D.W. Griffith films are like 3 hours long. Mm. But John Ford's starting out, so like Universal's not going to be like blank check to this John Ford guy.
This is much less problematic than Birth of a Nation. There's still problems in it, but...
Yes, they can have a whole entire thing about the Ku Klux Klan and horrible visualizations of black people, but this movie couldn't show you bashing a guy over the head with a bottle.
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently.
Was this before? This was before the morality code, or was it after?
Correct.
Okay. So, wow, they wouldn't even show that before the morality code and everything?
Well, so apparently there's a board that edited both straight shooting and this to cut down some of the stuff in the movie.
Wow, okay.
So, but basically the idea of the film is you have Cheyenne Harry. He's a rancher. He's working for this Mark Twain looking dude.
Can't remember his name.
Big white hair and a big mustache. And
I don't remember his name.
He fell in love with his daughter. And, they have moments where they're enjoying each other's company.
He carves her a cute little... He whittles her a heart that she seems like... He's like, I'll give this to you. And she just kind of... She doesn't seem that enthusiastic about it.
So, he whittles her a heart. But then, when an inspector from the big city shows up in a car...
Yeah.
Shows up...
He's a fancy man, but he can ride horses.
Yes, gets all
he
up...
rides the horse that killed a bunch of cowboys and for some reason wasn't put down immediately.
Yep.
Not that I'm advocating for that, I'm just surprised that Old West Farm didn't immediately put it down. I know, right?
He winds up falling in love with this woman, they're flirting a lot, and on the day that Harry and her are supposed to get married, she left a letter. And you said she Dear John.
Yeah, it's not quite a Dear John, because that's when you're in the military. But it reminded me of that.
Well, she left him a letter and like, I found another man. They went off to New York. I promise I won't start singing Joe Cocker. But it's interesting because like the whole entire film is based off of this love triangle. I feel like it is very dated because like, to be frank, she seemed to have pretty good chemistry with this rich dude. But the thing is, we want her to be with Harry, but what if she doesn't want to be with Harry?
She has very little agency.
Yeah, so like, and then he's like, I'm going off to New York City to go get her.
I'm going to go punch enough men.
Well, and that's the thing, like, Vester Pegg goes all out in this drunken scene is hilarious.
It's pretty good, yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, I feel like that's so late in the movie to introduce something bad about him. Because up to that point, it's just like, why...
Well, it gives him an excuse to be that way, I think. It's just kind of like, well, what does he have to lose except for, 100 acres and some money in the bank?
It's the kind of thing where it's just like, it's very simplified. The female character is very simplified to, like, have no depth at all.
She kind of looked like a baby, and I couldn't decide if that was, like, a directorial thing or if it was, like, a time thing.
Well, like the makeup and stuff like that.
Yeah, she looks like a little kid a lot of the time. Maybe not the makeup, but just the framing. Maybe she was just really tiny.
She was very tiny.
But, like that one episode where the dad and Harry were talking to each other, and she's just kind of standing in the doorway like this. It's like...
Because I feel like the first 40 minutes of this movie, it's okay. There's some interesting shots. Like, there's some really awesome cinematography in the opening moments. There's 3 layers of depth in some of these shots where it's like you have the foreground, you have a guy on a horse, and then down in a valley behind them, they have a bunch of cattle, and then in a hill going down into the valley on the opposite end, you have a bunch of horses coming down, and you're just like, that's an impressive shot, and actually being able to maximize that. So, like, I feel like a lot of the earlier parts, it's like, oh, it's really interesting visually. Mm-hmm. There's some interesting use of, like, more intimate close-ups, and there's one moment where, like, Harry Carey was doing some serious, like, oogling with his face with some of those close-up shots. But I feel like it doesn't really, like, kick off until, like, the last 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. There's a really awesome shot of, I think, L.M. Wells, who plays the rancher, the father of this young woman, in a John Fordian shot of him standing in a doorway. But, like, the, like, physical acting that he's doing, it's like you could tell he's really depressed and sad, and it's just like, okay, that's a good bit of acting, really well shot. But things get interesting when it turns out into an all-out brawl at this wedding, and it's funny, it's ridiculous, it's over the top. There's some really cool shots of all these cowboys riding down Broadway on horses and everything. So, like, I was like, for most of the movie, I'm like, I don't think I like this more than straight shooting. And then, bam, at the end, I'm like, okay, this is more interesting than anything in straight shooting. So, for the last 15 minutes, I did actually really enjoy this movie because it was really getting into gear. It just took you 40 minutes to get there. Yeah. Which, like, in a feature-length film, like, that's not so bad. But, like, when you're almost 3/4 of the way through the movie before it gets really interesting. Because up that point, like we said, it's a pretty straightforward just love triangle. And it's pretty simple. It has some interesting moments. But overall, I think this is an impressively made film. And also a really awesome scene at the end of the movie. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
It's a lot of fun at the end, yeah.
Do you have anything else that you want to add about Bucking Broadway?
No, I think you covered it.
So, if you have Stagecoach on Criterion, you could check this out, or you could go on YouTube. I don't know what the quality on YouTube is, but we watched this on a Blu-ray, so on restored footage. So
yeah, it was still a little jumpy, but you know.
Well, yeah, and this is a lost film, so I imagine they did have like the world's greatest print.
Yeah, makes sense.
But recommendations for you. So, Jess, what would you like to recommend?
Across the Spider-Verse, along with everyone else, it feels. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I was surprised. A couple of our friends said that they felt like it got a little long in some points. I did not feel that way at all. I sat through the movie, no issue. I thought it was great.
I loved it.
10 out of 10.
The only thing that I had any potential issue with was towards the end. Because it's really interesting because it's a parallel story with Gwen and Miles Morales, which was not expecting. They really fleshed out Gwen Stacy in this. And I think how they wrapped up her part of it fit perfectly. I feel like how they've wrapped up Miles felt a little sequel baity. Whereas, like, it just kept going, where it's just like...
I did keep thinking it was going to end.
Yeah, that was the only thing. Towards the end of the movie, I'm like, they could have ended it here, they could have ended it here, they could have ended it here, they could have ended it there. But the thing is, it's one movie cut in half.
Yeah,
so that's
and I guess I knew there was going to be a sequel, so I was like, oh, okay, yes.
Well, yeah, and I did too. But besides that, the animation's incredible. Like, all the different animation, because every single one of these characters is animated in a different way based off of their own world. Daniel Pemberton's score is incredible.
The color scheme, the color palettes.
Yes.
Kiss.
So Gwen Stacy's world's like a mood ring. And it's so warm and poignant. I loved her story. I loved Miles' story. I didn't think much of the Spot towards the beginning of the movie. I thought he was just a silly, fun villain. And then it goes places. And there was actually one of the most horrifying things that I've seen in an animated movie, honestly, when he goes like full power. But it was crazy because I expected more of like the Spider-Man squad or whatever, the Spider Squad, but when you actually
Spider Society, I think he calls it.
once you finally get there, that whole sequence is insane. And Shamik Moore, Haley Steinfeld, great. Oscar Isaac, great. Intimidating, unnerving. Brian Tyree Henry and Luna Lauren Velez, who play his parents,
Issa Rae.
great. Issa Rae, Jake Johnson, and Daniel Kaluuya stealing the show. It's Obi, who's Spider-Punk. There's a lot of awesome characters, crazy action, tons of emotion, but it's a really impressive film, and you all should see it. And my one other recommendation, based off of one of the films I got to watch on my watch list, was Ip Man. And it was an exciting, like, all the action in it is pristine, top-notch Donnie Yen kicking ass kind of thing. And there's a lot of character to it, too. And it's interesting because it's a World War II film. Because it's, like, about the Japanese invasion of China. So, like, Donnie Yen is defending Chinese martial arts against the Japanese. So, it's one of those kinds of things, and it's really exciting, and it's on Netflix. And apparently Ip Man 2 is also on Netflix, because now it keeps popping up as my main homepage. It's like, you gotta watch this one next!
Watch the sequel.
But, which I heard the action in the sequel's even more incredible. Now I just need to watch The Grand Master, which is the Tony Leung version of Ip Man.
I thought we saw that. Did we not watch that?
I'm trying, like, I don't think so.
Where would I have seen that? Maybe not.
A lot of martial arts films.
Yeah, maybe not.
I do have a lot of, like, Hero, House of Flying Daggers, Shadow, stuff
Mystery
like
of
that.
Chess boxing.
Yes.
Personal favorite.
And then one of my most standout movies over here is my box set of Criterion of Bruce Lee. So I've become quite a martial arts movie fan, apparently. But those are some recommendations for you. That's Bucking Broadway for you. And next episode, I'll be having our buddy Paige on, who will be recording for Hellbent.
Which I think she just picked based on the title, and that's it.
Yep, 100%.
That seems right.
But Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.